Okay, hello everyone. Today we're going to spend a little bit of time and I'm going to let you know about the Maryland Association for Environmental and Outdoor Education's Certified Environmental Educator Program. My name is Elena Takaki and I'm the chair of MAEOE's EE Certification Program, and I work with a great committee of people, volunteers, both board members and non-board members, that has put together this program. First thing I'm going to do is tell you a little bit about the EE certification program, and then we're going to talk about the online cohort that we'll be offering. The cohort will meet once a month, March through October of this year. So we'll go ahead and get started. So the Certified Environmental Education Program was developed to help MAEOE accomplish their goal of improving environmental education and training and the materials and increasing people's use in formal and non-formal education areas. A lot of people ask, why should I become certified? What's in it for me? What's the benefit of becoming certified? Well, one of the greatest benefits is that it provides a degree of professionalism to what we do as environmental educators. So most professions do have a certification program. And currently there's no environmental education degree program in Maryland, and there are very few around the country as well. Environmental education is very interdisciplinary in nature. So educators need to have a solid foundation in science, social studies, economics, education, and many other types of topics. So this EE certification program ensures that people have had sufficient background in these types of topics in order to become masters in their field. High-quality environmental education supports education reform goals, stays current with the learning standards and trends, and can positively impact school performance. And we've seen this in several education research studies that have been conducted. So environmental education is not a professional field in which everyone receives the same or even similar training. Some of you are probably certified through Project WET or maybe PLT. Some of you have probably never even heard of those programs. Others have taught in the classroom. Some people have never taught in a classroom. Some people have like water safety certification and other people don't. So there's a lot of variation in the types of training that people get. Again, the EE certification process shows that a group of people have met a very specific, similar need and have a foundation of environmental education training. So another reason to become certified is just your own professional recognition and growth. So we want environmental education to be respected as a profession both within and outside of classroom teaching. So if you're seeing students at an outdoor ed center, for example, you can assure parents that you have the qualifications to be teaching your students what it is that you're teaching them, and that you have the experience and background in order to do that in a qualified manner. So MAEOE has built their EE certification program based on the North American Association for Environmental Education's guidelines for the initial preparation of environmental educators. So it's a competency-based program. So the applicant needs to demonstrate what they know and what they can do. So the competencies selected are critical to professional environmental education. And they've been modified from the NAAE guidelines. And those guidelines are organized around 6 different themes. And here are the different themes. Environmental literacy, foundations of environmental education, professional responsibilities, planning and implementing environmental education, fostering learning, assessment and evaluation. For more detail on these themes, you can visit www.naaee.org. But for now, we'll just suffice it to say that each of the questions that you're asked or each of the skills that you're asked to demonstrate through the certification program is based around one of these themes. And each question or each skill that's demonstrated, it will tell you which theme it's addressing. And I'll show you an example towards the end of the PowerPoint presentation here. So the way what's in the application, the first thing that we look at is your resume. And so this is competency theme number 3 for NAAE, professional responsibility. We ask you to document real-world environmental education opportunities in which you've been involved and relevant professional development. Now, the EE certification program at Mayo is really not meant for the person just starting out in the environmental education field. We're really looking for someone that has minimum of 5 years work experience in the environmental education field. We ask that you submit 2 teaching observation evaluation forms, meaning that a coworker or a supervisor is going to observe you teaching some lesson plans, at least 2 lesson plans. And so the competency themes there are professional responsibility, fostering learning, and assessment and evaluation. So the lessons that are observed have to focus on environmental education concept, and we encourage people to have at least one of those lessons take place in the outdoors. And again, we'll take a little bit of a closer look at specifically what is in those observation evaluation forms. One of the most intense parts of the application format is the lesson plan or program outline. So we're looking at competency themes for environmental literacy, professional responsibility, planning and implementing environmental education, fostering learning, and assessment and evaluation. These 3 lessons have to show a progression of student learning of a particular concept, and each lesson must be at least 3 activities. So we're looking at least 3 hours or potentially 3 days worth of learning within the lesson plan that you submit. And at least 1 activity must be conducted in the out of doors. And again, we have a rubric, and we'll take a closer look at that at the end. A little bit more about the lesson plans. We're also looking at differential instructional methodologies, one of which should be investigative in nature. So we want to know that you have the ability to assess students in different ways, both formative and non-formative. So we're looking for different types of assessment tools that you're using. All of the lesson plans must at the very least be aligned with the Maryland state standards. You can also align them to the national standards, or if you have other regional standards, you can put that in there, but we're specifically looking for the Maryland state standards. Especially if you're working with students in the outdoors, we want you to include any kinds of safety concerns or how you're going to use the setting, and also to make sure that you do have differentiated learning instruction at least written into your lesson plan to allow for students that have varied learning levels to participate in the activity. We want to make sure that the activity and the lessons are applicable for all students. We do ask that you provide a personal reflection for each lesson. So what went well with the lesson, what didn't. If the lesson that you submitted is not one that you've actually conducted, then your reflection can be something like, how would you change, or how did you change this lesson from how you originally found it? How would you change it? What might you do differently than how it's written? Or other thoughts about how you might extend the activity. There's also an environmental literacy assessment, which consists of 10 questions. And the competency themes that we're looking at there are environmental literacy, foundations of environmental education, planning and implementing environmental education, and assessment and evaluation. So there are content questions, and there's also application of assessment tools. So while there's 10 questions, which doesn't seem like a lot, there is quite a bit of work involved for each question. For example, we ask you to run a complete evaluation on a lesson or activity or curriculum using the MAEOE guidelines. Also, we ask for 2 letters of reference, and if the people that are providing the reference could address how you meet the core competencies, that would be great. That's what we're looking for within those letters. Once you've completed everything, we have your resume, we have your 10 questions, we have your lesson plans, and your professional development plan, which I'll talk about in a little bit. What you're going to do is you're going to contact MAEOE. You can request some application materials, or you can request access to our Google site, which I'll show you in just a minute. The application is sent with instructions. You can enter the password. There's a protected site where all the materials are posted. You submit the application to MAEOE via Google Docs. You post everything on Google Docs, so it's really helpful if you have a Gmail account. Applications are reviewed by 3 committee members, and we should have the results to you within 8 to 12 weeks. If you score 70% or better, then you have passed. It's a pass-fail certification. If you score 70% or better, then there's a $100 application fee, and then we will mail a certificate to you, and that certificate is good for 5 years. If you do not score a minimum of 70%, then we will assign you a mentor, and that mentor can assist the applicant in addressing any kind of weaknesses that we found in the initial application. So far, we haven't had a lot of problem with that, with the applications that we have received to date. And excuse me, one of the weakest areas that we found so far is within the lesson plan. So there have been a couple instances where we've asked people to go and add more information to the lesson plans that they've submitted. But the applicant has a period of 18 months to resubmit an application addressing what was done to correct any weaknesses, and there's no application fee required. If you have submitted that, we will return your application fee within that 18-month period. You also have the right to appeal a denied application. If the applicant chooses to appeal, notify MAEOE in writing within 6 weeks of the time that we've notified you that you did not pass your certification. And then what will happen is the application will be reviewed by an ad hoc grievance committee composed of 3 different members of the advisory board who did not review the initial application. So if this grievance committee concludes that the applicant is worthy of certification, that decision will stand and the applicant will be notified in writing. And at that point, you can send in your check for $100 and your certification will be good for 5 years. If the grievance committee agrees with initial reviewers, the applicant can then elect to be assigned a mentor and then resubmit an improved application. And this decision will also be made known to the applicant in writing. We do a lot of our communication, obviously, by email these days. And if a lot of you have emailed me already through at eecert@maeo.org, and that's really the best way to communicate. And keeping those lines of communication open, I think, is the most important part. As I mentioned before, your certification is valid for 5 calendar years, beginning on the date the certification is awarded. As part of your application, there is a professional development plan, and we'll take a closer look at that in just a minute. Approval of the application would include acceptance of the professional development plan, and it's built into the scoring system that we have. Okay, so I have listed here some activities that are acceptable when you do recertified. These are some activities that you can participate in to show that you're still continuing your professional development. So after or within the 5 years, we want to see that you're still doing things to improve yourself at a professional level. Okay, so basically you would submit another professional development plan at the end of 5 years. And it's a $100 fee for recertification. So perhaps a lot of you are online right now to learn more about the cohort that we're offering March through October of this year. And so what we'll do is we are meeting once a month, March through October. It's an online meeting, and we'll meet Tuesday nights from 6 to 7 p.m. And the way that it works is that all of you will be working very closely with one another, and you'll be using Google Docs, and we'll be using Google Hangouts and the Google Sites. So it's really helpful to have a Gmail address. What will happen is there'll be assignments due each week, and a peer will review your assignments based on the scoring rubric. So this is the committee's way of having basically you and your peers review each other's work before we get it, so that if there are weaknesses in your application, hopefully your peer will catch that first before you submit it, before you submit your final application materials. We also guide you on completion of the requirements. I think one of the hardest things that people have had in finishing and completing their certification process is just sitting down and making time to do the assignments. So as I mentioned before, some of the questions can be kind of lengthy and they are a bit involved. But however, if you have somebody who's relying on you to review their material and they're waiting to review your material, there's sort of a deadline and a little bit of self-imposed pressure to get things completed. Also, we have guest speakers that will help you with topics that are complicated. So for example, there are many people who may not be familiar with the learning standards, the next generation science standards, or even the NAAE guidelines. So we have guest speakers that take you through each of those topics in more detail so that you have a greater understanding of what's expected of you and how you can score well on your application. Here are the dates. So I tried to pick Tuesday evenings, like the 3rd or 4th week of the month. So our first meeting will be on March 22nd. And really that meeting is so that we can meet each other, we can go over expectations, we're going to review the grievance policies again, and I'll show you how to use the Google site in order to navigate around. On our meeting April 19th, your first assignment is due, so your VITA will be due. And then also part 1 of our competency, and there are 2 questions in the issue investigation. And they're about the Maryland Environmental Literacy Standard. We'll have a lecture on the Maryland Environmental Literacy Standards, a guest speaker, I should say, not a lecture. In June, you'll have your first lesson plan due for peer review. So we'll spend a lot of time talking about the lesson plans at this meeting here because it's such a huge part of the scoring that people need to do really well in the lesson plans that they submit. Questions 1 through 4 will be due, and we'll talk about the next generation science standards in that particular module. In July, we're going to talk about the guidelines for excellence. Your second lesson plan will be due, and we'll look at questions 5 through 6 in the environmental literacy section. August is kind of light. There might be a lot of people on vacation at this particular time, but questions 7 through 9 will be due. So not a whole lot, but you'll be on your own for answering those 3 questions. Then in September, most of your materials will be all done by then. So you'll have question number 10, your professional development plan, and 1 observation will be due at that point. So hopefully that gives you enough time, maybe August and early September, or you can have the observation done in April and June if you're seeing kids. Or if you're working at an outdoor ed center, you might be seeing kids all summer long, and you can have the observation done over the summer. And then the last meeting is the 2nd observation is due, and you provide us with feedback, and we all say so long to one another. Now, if you have not completed all of the materials, say for example, you still have maybe question 10 to hand in, that's okay. We accept the applications on a rolling basis. So if you don't have everything done on October 25th, that's all right. You can still hand it in November, December, January, February. It's up to you. The reason that we chose the end of October is to give the committee time to review a larger number of applications, and so that MAEOE can put it in their brochure for their conference in February. Okay, if you haven't already emailed me, here's my email address, eecert@maeo.org. So go ahead and write that down, but I'll say it again before we end our session here. The last thing I want to show you is the Google site. So let me go ahead and share that. Okay. 1 second. So here is our Google site. Make it a little bit bigger. If you're not familiar with Google Sites, it's essentially a live web page where we can all add documents there, and all of the things that you need in order to complete your application are here. So right now we're at the home page, and the way to navigate is right here on the left-hand side. So let's go to the first link there is environmental literacy. So there are 2 parts to the environmental literacy section. There's part 1, which looks specifically at issue investigation. So we ask you to answer these, well, there are 2 questions, but there's a part A and a part B. And we specifically mention the number of points. So I would, if you're wondering how long your answer should be, take a look at the point value. So for example, part A is worth 10 points. So 5 points for each of the subsections there. And part B is worth 20 points. So 5 points for each of the subsections there. And then part C is worth 10 points. Okay. In order to look at the Google site, you need to email me at eecert@maeo.org and give me your Gmail address so I can give you access to the Google site. Then there are those 10 questions that I mentioned earlier, and I'm not going to go over all of the 10 questions now, but for example, one of the questions is asking you to look into the Tbilisi Declaration, which is really a pivotal point in the history of environmental education. So we, as an environmental educator, as a certified environmental educator, we want to be sure that you know about the history of environmental education, and you know that you have a good foundation and background information. Anything that you need to answer these questions, we provide resources for, either here on the Google site or links. So the second question asks you to read 1 of 3 articles, and we provide links for those articles. Okay, so again, I won't go over all of 10 questions, but they are up here on our Google site. And that's the environmental literacy section. If we go to the section for lesson plans, there's a lot of information here. But like I said, in the cohort, we walk you through each of these things that we're asking for. So one of the main things that we're looking for is that your lesson plan is investigative in nature. So, and some people have been trained in the Investigating and Evaluating Environmental Issues and Actions Protocol. IEE, IA is the acronym for that. And we provide those links for you so you can read more about that. But we will also talk about it on our Google Hangout. Locally, we also have the Guide to Creating Meaningful Watershed Experiences and information on the Maryland Environmental Literacy Partnership to help you create the type of lesson plan that we're looking for. Again, the lesson plan is comprised of a minimum of 3 activities. It shows a progression of student understanding, and it demonstrates differentiated learning techniques. And we also provide resources like the 5E model, 2 different types of 5E models. We have examples there. Bloom's taxonomy, so when you're writing objectives, you should use the Bloom's taxonomy. There's a lesson plan template there, and an article on multiple intelligences to help you with that. Here's information on the professional development plan that I was talking about. So you have to submit a professional development plan. I think it's worth 75 points in your scoring. And then this document here, it's a Word document that you can download that specifies all of the detailed information that you need to include in your professional development plan. One of the most important pages that you'll use in going through your certification process is the scoring rubrics. So here we have the full scoring rubric. So you will know exactly how you will be scored by the 3-person committee member. I'm going to download or open the lesson plan rubric here. And you can see that it's pretty detailed to guide you through the various things that we're looking for. So, are you paying attention to the audience? Did you select materials and strategies developmentally appropriate? Did you include historical and cultural perspectives? So all of them are here, and also the competencies that NAAEE is looking for is also listed here next to each of the requirements. Okay, there's also a link called Useful Resources, and this is our MAEOE's diversity plan, our code of ethics, which we ask each of you to sign, and the grievance policy that I talked about earlier is also here in writing. Okay, so it's about the end of time, and at this point, if you have any questions, please email me at eecert@maeoe.org, and I'm happy to answer any of those questions for you. All right, thank you everyone for tuning in, and I hope to see you in our cohort. Thank you. Bye-bye.